Hello, good morning. Welcome to Show Studio and the live panel discussions for this season. In these discussions, experts from all parts of the industry discuss and debate the most important Fashion Week shows of the season. Today, we're here to discuss New York Fashion Week, and we're going to be looking at Tomo Koizumi's Spring-Summer 2020 show. There is a lot to discuss after his debut last New York Fashion Week, and I have a panel of experts joining me. So before we begin, I'd like them each to introduce themselves. I am guest chair for today, and I'm Rosanna Falconer. And now moving to you, Sinead.
I'm Sinead O'Dwyer, and I'm a designer.
I'm Corinna Nobbs, and I'm a freelance academic and futurist.
I am Maria Castani, and I look after young brands, and I support young talent.
I'm Joshua James Small. I'm a designer, stylist and model.
Thank you all very much. So let's begin. Tomo, discovered on Instagram by Katie Grand and Giles Deacon, or at least Giles pointed Katie to his Instagram. His debut 6 months ago at New York Fashion Week was generally seen as a breakthrough, as a highlight of the schedule. In fact, the New York Times put it as the saving grace of an otherwise anodyne New York Fashion Week. The show, which took place at Marc Jacobs' store, included acres of organza in these shapes reminiscent of topiary and this Technicolor palette, which I obviously loved. And inevitably, it was all over Instagram because those kind of designs are Instagram gold, and it kind of has been ever since. It's had a lot of editorial pickup. It's been shot by Tim Walker for Love magazine, which I know was very pleasing to Tomo. On Thursday, he won the Designer Debut Award at the Daily Front Row Fashion Media Awards. And then yesterday, obviously, was his sophomore collection at New York Fashion Week, again at Marc's store. It had a very unusual format. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the show or seen parts of the show, so we'll move on to that shortly. But first of all, just as he's fairly a new kid on the block, I wanted us to look at his design and his stance for the fashion industry and, in general, what that means for the industry. So, let's begin. He makes these very unusual, well, he makes these statements, which I love because I think they're such great talking points. His Vogue review for yesterday's show began with, "I want to make something that is not commercial." Which I think is a talking point, is just excellent. And he also said, "I just want to bring joy." So, Joshua, if we begin with you.
Yeah.
It's a really refreshing perspective. Is it realistic?
I think it is. Because from a sustainable point of view, I think fashion should move towards a place where it is dealt with like art. Do you know what I mean? Where you trade fashion like art, so you're not creating pieces that are commercial, because there is enough commercial matter out there for us to consume. Do you know what I mean? We are overproducing clothing at a ridiculous rate at the moment, which we can wear and rewear and over and over again. Especially with, there's a pledge this month where people can buy sustainable clothing by buying just charity shop clothing or not buying anything at all. I think you can find that through Claire Press.
Who's brilliant.
Who's brilliant. Absolutely love her. Thought I'd whack her name in there. So I think that fashion shows should be heralded as more like couture. So we should trade it like art. Do you know what I mean? So what he's doing kind of fits a more forward-thinking purpose.
And there is, I love the idea that of the way it's so forward-thinking, and obviously the link to art when you see the collection, and I'm sure this is why it provoked so much joy and people loved it so much on Instagram. It does just make your heart leap in a way an art piece might. But this is fashion. There is that commercial undertone. Maria, you work with a lot of young designers. Nice. What are the implications of going into it with that attitude?
Dear, good question. First of all, I love his statement. Just to go back to what he said before, I love what he's doing. I think it's absolutely forward. You need to work with your gut and your heart. And we have so much, there's plethora of things around us at the moment. And you have to be at the right time, at the right place, with the right product, and that makes it even harder. And what he has come up with is, I love what I do. I go with my gut and my heart, and I think this is what everyone should be doing. It's a new statement, it's a new thing to move forward. It's a new thing for young designers to concentrate, to focus on what is that they want to offer and why, and to try to break through the industry that way. Because it's terribly, terribly, terribly challenging, especially with the young talents nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned this briefly just while we were getting ready for the panel, that he does have this fairy godmother in the form of Katie Grand, who brought in this dream team of Pat McGrath and Guido and the supermodels of our day. As young talent, it is hard. I mean, you are a young designer and breaking through. You've obviously found in what ways do you approach it?
I mean, I definitely resonate with his way of seeing things, but from my perspective, it is incredibly hard to like sustain that financially unless you have this golden moment, or you have like someone who's like, I'm supporting you, or like financially supporting you. At the end of the day, fashion is very money driven, so it's really hard to make something that's completely uncommercial and then be able to like have enough time to do that actually without having like several other jobs. So.
Well,
But of course,
exactly.
apparently he just works in the one room in his sister's apartment. So, I mean, obviously, like he's working in a way that is
Sustained.
looks like it's not like about him having this, you know,
Huge studio and many seamstresses. Yeah,
Exactly, so
it's in his sister's
he's
sitting
trying
room.
to
and-
like, you know, make sure he can make his work, and so he's willing to sacrifice other things to do that, and that's the only way you can do it, I think, if you want to make, in the beginning anyways, if you want to make work that's totally uncommercial.
Yeah, and actually, you're right in I suppose, because it's non-commercial, because he is essentially producing one-off couture for clients on his Instagram. It says, if you would like a couture, please, you know, email, and also for pop stars.
Yeah.
The production runs are one-offs and small, so it can be done in his sister's sitting room.
Yeah.
I think for young designers, it's when the production runs get crazy for wholesale that it becomes
Yeah.
really difficult.
It's terribly difficult.
I think I've been doing some research because this is an area that I'm interested in the potential of digital garments. And I've actually been using his work in part of my research to see if people would want to purchase, experience trying on one of his dresses digitally. And I think that could be a potential revenue model for the future. So the craft and the couture and the one-off stay together, but people could still potentially enjoy or access his pieces in a kind of digital physical environment.
That blows my mind. But then they'd just be in their digital showroom and they wouldn't be able to wear it out to a party afterwards, right?
Well, at the moment, I think
live on
the current,
They could put it on Instagram.
They just
that's
want
exactly it.
content.
That's the model, that you would wear it on Instagram, or potentially in the future, if there's another marketplace or Second Life type environment where we might want to show our digital garments. But for now, the currency would be Instagram, although hopefully there were going to be another platform soon.
There is a platform coming up soon.
Yeah, there was
Yes,
one launching
yes.
in a few weeks.
Yes, exactly, yes. So, and this is the way forward for them.
I love the perspectives that each of you have brought up. We've kind of ticked 4 boxes already, which will offshoot into so many other areas, I'm sure. I suppose one thing that really flags, and the reason it was such a standout show, if this show had been in London, it would have been remarkable, but it would have been as utterly joyful as it is, no doubt. But the fact that it was in a New York Fashion Week where Calvin Klein wasn't showing, and it did feel, to quote the New York Times, a bit anodyne. It's that it's taking place in the commercialism of the US fashion industry, and I think that makes it particularly significant. Is this bright, joyful, made with a stance of art? Is that the fashion that the world needs right now? Putting that out to all of you.
I think, yeah, we were talking about that earlier and saying that it's maybe a bit of a discussion that's happens, I don't know, too often, but we had slightly different viewpoints on it. And that I think yes, but I come more from quite a consumer perspective, and marketing and consuming beautiful content makes me happy. And maybe I'm a bit, I don't know, maybe that's a bit basic, but it's true.
Same. Yeah.
Whilst you had a slightly different perspective.
Yeah, what was your perspective?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can see your point, I suppose, because I'm very much less looking at imagery, because I'm very much like making, and I can maybe have a little bit more of a like perspective of as I make and seeing how it's so hard to kind of like have that very creative output, but then not really know how to continue and like and live in the fashion industry while being that way, and it's like quite hard. So yeah, I kind of have a less kind of romanticized version of it, because my work is like basically just sculpture. So figuring out how to like transition into something that I can, you know, stop working as a nanny and like whatever. So I just don't see it as, you know, that's kind of from my perspective. Yeah.
For me, it's definitely a yes, because we need people to get inspired from, and I feel that especially in New York there is a lack, you know, of inspiration, if I may say so. And you need this va-va-voom. It's an injection. It's a happiness injection. Commercially, how we will do later on, there is always a question mark. But setting a goal and going for something smaller with support, and just unleash your ideas and your talent, and be fearless. I feel that we have become quite suppressed with everything that's happening around us, and it's kind of a way out to say there is talent, huge amounts of it, and we're out there to show you that there is, you know, something genuine and original and colorful, either to get inspired from or get ideas from, or to be treated as a very small kind of like product for a few people, which is okay with that. This is okay as well. It doesn't have to be like commercially available to all. And we would go back like years ago, and Joshua mentioned like John Galliano before, and you know, it's what like all designers used to do. They used to feed our brains with like emotions and ideas and color, and then we used to go back and look at their designs or like read magazines back then and feel like stupendously happy and inspired. So for me, it's definitely yes.
Do you think, I wear colour, and I do sometimes feel that in business situations, I can be dismissed a little bit, because it can be seen as youthful, very. People have certain, it's not exactly seen as power dressing, I suppose. And do you think that a designer who uses so much colour, particularly in this topiary-like format, could be dismissed? The title of his work for Love magazine with Tim Walker, I loved. It was Puff Pieces, and that was almost like declaring it and being like, yeah, they're puff pieces, aren't they fabulous? What do you think that some people, particularly when we're so ingrained with this idea that Celine is the pinnacle, and fashion is, I mean, still fashion is so associated with black and all of its connotations. What is the significance of colour for the consumer?
Should I go for it, or no? Joshua, do you?
Yeah, you go, Joshua, because you haven't spoken for it.
Well, I don't know whether, I think my response is less to that and more to what you were saying before about New York and all that sort of thing. And I don't think it really matters where it was, because I think the whole world is so interconnected now, and regardless of where it was, we would still be chatting on whether it was commercially viable. Do you know what I mean? It's that silly question that goes around all the time. We're always like, oh, is it commercially viable? And I mean, it makes sense, because that's what we're aiming for, and it's an industry which we are pushing for commerciality. But in terms of it seems silly, because it's so uncommercial that it almost seems invalid to us for how we'll make that commercial. Do you know what I mean? And he has said about how he can make it commercial through like collaborations. He just doesn't want investment, because then he has to give something back when people invest. Whereas he would rather do things, I guess, like perfumes and things like that. Do you know what I mean? The essence of Tomo. Do you know what I mean? So you would get an idea or a representation or like an image on like a product or a book, but you wouldn't actually buy like an actual garment, and everyone knows that anyway.
That's Ronald van der Kemp, who is a brilliant sustainable demi-couture designer, believes in the same idea, that to expand and see commercialism, it's through licensing and
I'm perfectly happy to buy a mag. Like, I would happily buy a very expensive book with images in it, and I will be just as satisfied as with like a real garment. Do you know what I mean? Because because the images have been created by all of these multidisciplinary people, and the image is sometimes far better than the garment is.
Yeah,
do you know what
interesting.
I mean? So you're going to do it much more. So I don't think it mattered that it was. Do you know what I mean?
I think I just brought up the New York thing because it contrasts so much.
Yeah.
If we look back to I think it was 8 years ago at Fashion Week when Medium Kirchhoff was showing, who had a similar stance of joy. What did you say?
Rest in peace.
I know, I miss it. And they had a similar stance of joy. I think because there was also Mary Kate Ranzu showing and Roxandra, London was awash with colour, and with I think it particularly, perhaps it's just more that it stood out in New York, maybe.
But the colour thing, people, do you know what I mean? It is responsive, and with Instagram it is, I guess the more colour there is, the longer you're going to hold on your feed. Do you know what I mean? Because I was reading about how people can see like 10, 15 images from just scrolling through it in 30 seconds. Do you know what I mean? And everyone knows that anyway. And I guess if it's something that's as attention grabbing as that, you might stop for a little bit longer and hold, do you know what I mean? You might even click on the page.
Yeah.
Dare I say.
Hold your
I think
gaze.
color creates emotions, which is, it's something very strong. And when you wear color, either you accept the fact that you wear a color, or you don't think about it, or you think about it and you're confident with it, or you want to shy away from it because of the way you will be, received or perceived. But it brings so much. It's the antithesis of emotions that creates, and the boldness of it that makes it such a powerful tool, in my eyes at least, and in the eyes of quite a lot of designers nowadays, I believe, when they work with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if you look as well at the psychology of colour, and when you link it to the economic environment and things like that, there tends to be that polarization. Either people will gravitate towards darker colours so they can almost fade into the background and almost feel the difficulty, or they go the opposite and go super bright. And if you look at some of the data from companies like Edited about kind of colour trends, there is less kind of black wasn't the winner that it overall kind of was, which is kind of interesting. There is beginning to see a bigger kind of spectrum of colours being sold on a mass scale.
Oh, promising, pleasing. Well, I want to look at his design. I mean, it's hard to say design codes because, well, I do actually think he has them established, but I think we can do that while looking at the show. Really, the questions that I had before yesterday was just thinking, is this going to be a case of a tough second album? Is he going to do an about turn, as designers sometimes do? But let's delve into the show. I'll let the team bring up the footage, which was on this fantastic one model presentation format where dressers came on in black and helped her dress and put on each garment one by one. There were 8 looks in total, I believe. And I also loved the dressing and undressing process, which we'll see, because it showed that all of this organza, which in some cases is up to up to 650 feet of the organza. It's just fastened with a zip, which is brilliant and really remarkable when you see it in practice. And then another thing to say that he works with, I think a lot of people might see his design and think that it's tulle a la Molly Goddard, but it's actually Japanese organza, which he chooses because of its breadth of colours and shades. It has 170 shades available to him, and hence he's able to create the rainbow that he does. So I suppose, handing over to all of you, have you seen snippets of the show so far? And what were your initial thoughts?
I mean, I think it held a similar, I can only kind of describe it that way, and as the first show, and it seemed like another kind of moment again from the way it was structured. And I don't know, I think some people might say maybe it hasn't moved on as much, but I think there's a bit of a so what? It's the way it is just now still works. I don't know if works is the right word, perhaps.
If you go onto his live story, it's on there. So on his Instagram stories, there's him introducing, and then you can watch the live one. Or maybe you can't on desktop, only on mobile. Oh. Well, we'll find a way. Susie Bubble has some good clips as well. Sorry, Corinne, I was just keen to bring up the visuals.
And I guess my answer was yes.
Yes, okay. And I think that it's a bit like, I remember this happened a lot with Michael Halpin at the beginning, that press kept saying, what's he going to do next? And actually his commercial value and success has been, and the reason that high net worth women around the world are loving his design so much is because they know what they can get from him, and that's been established very clearly. Here we are.
His stuff is beautifully cut.
Oh my God, I know.
It's a vast, like, in contrast, because that's just, I mean, it looks amazing, but it is simply just strips of, do you know what I mean, gathered, whereas Halpern is, do you know what I mean, it's intelligent pattern cutting.
Yeah, definitely. The corsetry is amazing. But in terms of that, establishing that aesthetic. I know that Tomo he likes to see his designs in movement, particularly dancing, and that's why they chose this model.
I think they chose Ariel Nicholson also was a good kind of like statement to choose a model which is different, a transgender model that she's been around for a few years now, and she carried other clothes very beautifully. Her movement was very strong and very bold, same as the clothes.
Yeah.
And I love particularly the fact that it was just one person. It was more like a performance. It was a performance. It wasn't a catwalk. And it was at Marc Jacobs' shop, which is, you know, it's within someone else's environment. So how do you make this stand out? Obviously with your art, with your clothes, but also the performance on its own. And I very much like that. I thought it was quite special. And also the fact that it was just 7 outfits, and that's it. It was 7 outfits, which again, we go back to what we were talking before. Smaller, focused, maybe not commercially available to all, but a statement rather of what we can do and the beauty we can offer and create.
And I mean, look at her go. It's just fantastical, it really is. And I think particularly after last season, where it was such a lineup and casting of the who's who of the model industry, this also has a certain focus, doesn't it? Just having the one model performing, as you say. Do you think that this... people have been debating shows and formats. Do you think that this experimental stance is the way designers should be going, certainly young ones?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I much prefer this than the last show because of the performative element. Yeah, and it's much more interesting to me to like look at and the undressing and dressing, and yeah, I think catwalk is a bit like it gets quite boring. Whereas this is like, I would watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I think
with a catwalk show, I probably wouldn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah. And also, one thing I like, last season, and a couple of the reviews commented on it, these are heavy pieces, and walking down the stairs occasionally looked quite awkward. Yeah. And I don't think that was the Tabitha Simmons shoes. These are heavy and they're voluminous. So just having her enjoying the garments on a flat floor also seems to work a bit better.
Yeah. I can imagine that's why performers like to wear them as well, because they can, like, the weight of the fabric moving up and down is really like, it feels really good.
Yeah.
So I can,
It also was a clever way to show that they're not actually that terribly heavy.
Yeah, true, actually.
In my eyes.
Yeah.
So that you can actually go a bit bonkers if you feel like it, or you can make it an entrance either by walking or dancing. It wouldn't make any difference. I mean, they're very playful, and they seem a lot lighter than they look.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it would have been cool though to see them struggle. That sounds really awful. Do you know what I mean? Like the struggle of getting it on and then finally having that look all there, and she's kind of, do you know what I mean? She's striving for that look rather than something that's easily put on. It takes away the fantasy of it if it's just, do you know, this light thing that she can slip on and off. I like the idea that she would have to struggle to get it on, and once it's on, you've created this amazing thing which has taken time.
So would you have preferred her not to have any dresses and dresses?
I don't think it would have. I like this format. I quite like it. It's different, and it got people's attention clearly. But I don't think it would have mattered whether it was a show like it was last time or this time. I think as long as the design is interesting, different, and generally strikes a chord with the audience, then it doesn't really matter whether you're showing 40 looks down a staircase or 8 looks in a small room.
Really?
Do you know what I mean?
I think the format is absolutely the most important thing.
Yeah, as long as
like
it.
That
Yeah, but I mean, she still could have done. She still could, like, if it was 40 looks going down a catwalk, she still could have had that. Because I don't know whether it's, but one of his massive influences, which is why I said Galliano, was apparently he used to read magazines all the time, and one of his massive influences was the Dior 2004 couture show, which was the Egyptian collection, which is, if you look at the parallel between his stuff now and that collection specifically, the silhouettes are very similar. So you've got those massive fishtails and those enormous bustiers and enormous jackets. I don't know, and less so specifically for this recent collection, but especially so for his first collection. I guess his design ethos altogether, he was inspired by these massive, and when you watch this show, these pieces were enormously heavy pieces. They were ridiculously heavy, and the women had to struggle to, you know, walk down the catwalk in those heels and in those outfits. And I think the way that she performs in this room is kind of, it mirrors slightly the way that a Galliano girl would move. Do you know what I mean? Down a catwalk, she has that kind of theatricality.
That
She's
presence.
playing to the audience. So that's why I think that it doesn't matter whether it would be.
I think maybe, Sinead,
larger.
your point was just that the show last season, the models did the generic walk, didn't
Oh,
they?
yeah.
But don't you think catwalk nowadays creates a bit of a distance?
Yeah.
Don't you find that? Whereas a performance, or when you feel closer to the object or to the designer in a way, it makes you feel more in tune with what he's doing. Sometimes, you know, like we sit on chairs and there's either a raised catwalk or like a lower catwalk and you can't see what you're looking at, and it's not a lot of movement other than the walk, as we say. And that this has changed nowadays. They're looking for something different. They're looking for, you know, a bit of performance or something else to put out there in order to, you know, attract.
Oh, it's also about what you're saying about it being like, you know, the garments being heavy and the shoes being high and women struggling. I really don't think that in this moment, I feel that that's like, so I feel like people want to see it looking light and airy. Women don't want to like struggle around and put on like all these things.
I don't want to, like, I'm not
I know that they want to,
yeah,
but I just mean like, I feel like the collective
Right.
feeling right now is like a bit of a more
Joshua was
like an
talking about the
easiness.
theatrical aspect.
Yeah,
of it.
it's
No,
not.
I understand that, but I
you know,
just-
because
yeah.
obviously, like in today's world, we don't want women struggling in massive
You know,
heels that
for
they can't
sure.
walk on, and you know, with bloody, you know, like you would see with girls who like bloody
these-
feet.
these
That's
days
not
are long
appropriate.
gone.
But I think that element of theatricality and the woman, you know, teetering on tiny heels, it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to injure them. But do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like it was, which was ridiculous, where you throw a girl out. It just has to have some sort of theatricality where she is, do you know what I mean, playing a character. So whether that would be on stilt kind of heels with large garments, and I don't think it's a case that. It's just that people aren't doing it. Like, nobody does it anymore. Galliano did it so well. I mean, there are a couple of people that do try that now. So like, you've got art school, which obviously had really performativity within there, where they had, you know, they would go out and they would reach into the audience and they would, do you know what I mean? It's very plays to the audience. And like Charles, he does like
Yeah,
his
I
show,
was gonna say.
like
Women's
they,
history,
but
so-
obviously he's also inspired by Galliano also. So there's not many people that do.
Valentino
have
did
that.
something similar with the dancers, as an example.
Sort
the ballet
of,
dancers,
but sometimes
in a way,
sometimes
so-
dancers can be a cop out though, because it's not. It's a very orchestrated thing. It's not something where you've told a girl a direction, you want her to be a certain way, and you let her do her thing. Do you know what I mean? And today's models are a different breed of models. Do you know what I mean? The models back then, you'd give them a direction, you'd say what you wanted, you'd give them a character, and you would push them out. I know, but do you know what I mean? And they would play to that character whatever they thought was right. So you would get all these interesting reactions and interactions with the audience that even the designer might not have expected. Whereas nowadays, all the girls, they want to look a certain way. They know they've got to look a certain way. They know that when they get to the end of the catwalk, that you look at the camera and you've got to get that picture that you don't pull a face, you don't do something that could risk you losing that Instagram moment. So you don't get many designers that do what I suppose this is, because I'm sure that model wasn't thinking that, oh God, I need to look wonderful for this, you know, for these photos.
The lookbook that's gone out has been shot totally separately, yeah.
And also the images of her, they're very like blurry. Her face isn't looking perhaps the best in terms of like cliched model standards. So it's just, she doesn't care. She's in the moment. She's enjoying it, and that's what we need more of. And that's why it's so exciting. And that's why people are talking about it.
I read, I can't remember who was the person who had said that, like when they see the address on the hanger, and then when they take it off, like they're not sure what way to put it on and which way up to put it. And Tommo said that he really likes that, and maybe that's something else that comes through in the kind of like the discovery of how to act in it and how to even just like put it on is quite interesting. And then something else I was thinking about when we were talking at the very beginning about if we always ask, like, what's the commercial value or what's the commercial future? And I think the move towards kind of potentially more presentations is another question, is to ask, like, what's the cultural kind of, like, I don't know, impact or value of this moment, which I know it's very subjective, but I think it has a wider measure that we could discuss maybe, and you can measure it in a very I don't know, basic way through like social media and sentiment analysis and things like that, but it is a way that you can instantly see is something having a moment. Does it resonate with people?
Yeah, and in terms of cultural impact, that finale shot from his debut show did have cultural impact. It made, we keep talking about the Instagram impact of it, but it was on front pages, it was in broadsheet press. That's hugely impactful.
It's everywhere.
Not only for a young designer, but for the fashion industry as a whole. And particularly to have such a refreshing image from Fashion Week. How about also because there's no doubt he will find ways to, as you said, through licensing, through perfume, or perhaps through small one-off collections to expand. What do you think about his way at the moment, the people he's dressing, editors, performers? Have any in particular caught your eye?
I mean, I think the way that he trained was as a costume designer, and he was very passionate about like pop stars from Japan, so it made sense that they were the first people who were really, I don't know, advocates of what he does. And it obviously is a very complementary like relationship as well.
Yeah, because as Sinead was saying earlier, as a performer, having a garment that moves beautifully with you does very much, it all ties in, it brings out the performance more.
It also shows that he's focusing on something quite particular, like one-off garments.
Yeah, yeah.
This is what most likely he seems that he wants to do, especially if he's to go into, apart from licensing, but as a designer, he wants to focus into one-off garments, from my understanding.
This is an editor from Vogue Thailand who wore so appropriately dressed for the camp show at the Met Gala. Vogue UK, I love this quote on his last show: "This kind of fashion represents the current appetite for the inaccessible, the dreamy, the crazy, couture-like artisanal creations that serve as the antidote to all the see now, buy now merchandise that's been stuffed down our throats in recent years." That's Anders who said that so beautifully and well put, and that notion of being stuffed down our throats and the see now, buy now, which was a format that New York Fashion Week very much championed. Would you agree? Is this what the fashion industry and the fashion consumer is seeking?
Do people do see now, buy now?
Sorry?
See now, buy now. People know there's no one on schedule, is there, that's doing see now, buy now?
Tommy Hilfiger still is.
Yeah.
And Ralph Lauren is
It died a death because it wasn't really. I definitely didn't like it when it started, and I don't like it now. I don't think it had but I do think that it led to something better and something more interesting, such as look at Fenty and what they're doing, and like what Burberry are doing, where it drops. So you drop like, not masses either. I'm not talking about like, because see now, buy now was like so ridiculous, and it wouldn't be feasible for a small designer because you'd have to have. People don't realise that see now, buy now is not see now, buy now. You would still have the presentation to the buyers before you do the show. So it just adds an extra show to what was already. Do you know what I mean? It's so silly.
It could only really be pulled off by huge brands.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it would ruin a small designer. But however, now Burberry are doing drops. They did a drop recently. It was like a couple of months ago where they dropped like, I think it was some leather like arm cuffs, and they had like, I think it was like 50 of them, and they dropped them. They were like £300, so they're like semi-accessible. I mean, within fashion, it's semi-accessible. And no more of them. That would be it. You know what I mean? They do the drop that day. They'd sell out. That would be it. And then you could move on to the next thing. And like Fenty does it in drops now, so they don't do like a collection as far as I'm aware. I think they just do drops of like certain looks, and then they get distributed around stores. There's no overconsumption either, because I assume that by doing drops you're able to do short runs of things, and then if they work, work, then you can do another drop of it, like a reissue, which we're seeing a lot of designers do now of reissues of collections previously. So doing drops makes much more sense. And I guess you needed See Now Buy Now to lead to that point.
Yeah, because going back to your sustainability point at the beginning, See Now Buy Now had its moment at a time. I think actually it was a catalyst to all of us having this realization on the sustainability of the industry, and as use of stuff down our throats, I think really underlines the idea of excess, the idea of this stock that was left, because See Now Buy Now was done without the expertise of knowing the full repercussions of the selling season and the press response and the consumer response to a certain extent. So buying was guesswork in a lot of ways.
Also, people are everyone likes to just say there's a problem with the fashion industry and likes to discuss the impossible. And I don't think there was major problems there. It was just everyone liked to talk. Do you know what I mean? When there's nothing to talk about, people like to talk about something. So they'll create a problem.
And they like to
nothing.
break the mold.
Yeah, so they'll create a problem out of nothing. So they'll talk about See Now Buy Now being a thing that we needed because we needed change, but we didn't need change at all. We needed tweaking. We needed certain things changing slightly. We didn't need everyone to overconsume through See Now Buy Now.
No, absolutely. But I thought it was just like an offering, a spur of the moment.
Yeah.
To offer something that did not exist before in a way to shake the waters a little bit in order from it, hopefully, to learn, so we can learn something from it and then improve and move forward. It wasn't necessarily the ideal thing in my eyes at all. But something had to be done, and it was something that was an offer back then, but it has changed quite a lot now, to the better, obviously, first and foremost, and that's what is important at the end of the day. Because there are ideas, there are offerings on the table. You just have to identify which ones are suitable and which ones are not. We're so stuffed, as you very well said, with things and product. That you become lost in it.
And Anders did also say, he did describe these kind of clothes as inaccessible, which I think does have connotations of not digestible, not understandable to any. Are these clothes understandable to anyone but the fashion elite? I was looking for videos of Tomo on YouTube, and there were a couple from vloggers of lols at New York Fashion Week. What on earth is this? See my live reaction. And it is quite, fashion in the same way. We always like to mix things up. I think from the external perspective, people it's very easy to mock the industry. It has that floozy reputation, much more so than art. And this idea of inaccessibility for your average, is that a good thing?
I don't think it matters. And I think the same thing happens in art, particularly with contemporary art. People are always whether it's a broadsheet newspaper or maybe not a broadsheet newspaper, maybe the other one, saying,
tabloid.
Yeah, saying what is this and what does it mean? But I think from a consumer perspective, it doesn't matter. It's not necessarily a bad thing if it's inaccessible. It's just, and maybe to answer your question about as consumers, we want choice. We want to see as much as possible from this all the way to something which is completely opposite, or in all shapes, whether that's fabric construction or color or minimalism. And I don't think that's going to change.
And actually, it's a good approach to come from that perspective, and just to bear in mind that even if it is inaccessible for some, for others like Maria, it makes your heart leap and it brings you so much joy, and how refreshing to have something like that.
That way it is accessible.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's not necessarily that someone would want to wear it, but more just to enjoy it.
Yeah, get pleasure from
yes.
I think it is accessible. And then potentially if you had a wedding and really wanted to stay forever, you try, but you wouldn't necessarily wear that day to day anyway. So it's not the same thing as, say, a Celine suit being inaccessible, where it's something you could actually wear every day, but you'd never be able to afford it. This is not meant to be a day-to-day garment anyways, well, unless you want it to be.
I mean, there is one lady on his Instagram wearing it down the I think the sidewalk in Tokyo and she makes it look quite everyday and wears it so well.
I would wear it.
You definitely
You would wear it too.
definitely
Yes, for sure.
It's like maybe not by day, maybe not before 12 o'clock noon, but it's about to be 12 o'clock noon, so
I
I'm
would
ready
like to
put my
sleep in
Tomo
it as
on.
an example. Just wake up and feel like, colourful and fabulous.
Yeah, feels so much joy.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think we are ready to round up. Do you guys have anything else that you would like to add? I feel like, Corinna, you're itching to say something while staring at the screen.
I don't know. Like, would any of you want to try on one of his dresses digitally?
I would happily try on some of. I love, like, the bigger the better. Do you know what I mean? You might as well just try on anything and anything.
But I want to try it on physically.
I would absolutely love to.
first.
You wouldn't, or you
I
would?
would try on both, but like I would really like when I think about the experience of trying digitally versus physically, I'm like really excited to try and physically, and I'm like, I don't really necessarily need to see myself in it. You see, it's more about that I want the feeling of it on.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily. If I had it on digitally, it would just be more about like me enjoying seeing my face on the dress, but I don't care about that as much as like feeling the dress.
Yeah, it's a
on.
different physicality.
Yeah, so that's more.
For sure, the same for me. Like, I would try it digitally, but I would prefer, or I would dream of like putting the dress on like in real life. Just, as I said, sleep in it, literally.
And that quantity of organza blows my mind. I'd love to touch it and
Absolutely.
imagine it's
Just
really
like to
scrunchy.
turn it the other way around and see how it's made. And
Yeah.
he uses just one zip with all this volume, just one zip.
As we saw in the
Yeah, so I
presentation,
would just
I just think it would be so comical to wear it in like a normal situation. Do you know what I mean? Just like sitting having tea. Do you know what I mean? I would love to just. And also, why not? If you were ever given that opportunity, why not? It's just it's so interesting. If you were given the opportunity to wear it, why would you not? I suppose it would probably be for an editorial or something like that. But do you know what I mean? You wouldn't pass it up. You would say yes with a heartbeat. You just want to try it out. And he is a digital designer. I know he's not a millennial, but the whole concept is very millennial because he was found through Instagram. He learned how to make things.
He is a millennial because he's 31.
He's so
I didn't want to. Is he? I don't know. Is
He's
that's the one before,
I
isn't
don't
it?
think he's millennial.
I don't know. I didn't want to say that he was if he wasn't.
Similar age, millennial.
Yeah, because he was. I wrote it down. He's like because he learned how to sew through YouTube. He was found through Instagram. All of his stuff is highly Instagrammable. Do you know what I mean? He is the epitome of like a digital designer, I guess.
Yeah,
You know, so the idea
and a
of like
self-starter.
digitally trying things on is interesting. I think I'm not sure how much I'm on board with it, but I think it's interesting when you talk about like how he's come to be. And we also live in an age where, because he gained 26,000 followers overnight when his first show went out.
It's a good stat.
Which is pretty cool. But it's like talking about like how fast people can become famous now. Because like Frederick earlier this year that did the balloons that I walked in.
Yeah.
He gained 80,000 followers overnight, and it's only happening more and more now where you get these designers that do something which is really reactional. Do you know what I mean? You get a reaction from it, and if it speaks to the public, doesn't matter whether they're interested in fashion or not, as long as people can laugh at it, make a meme out of it, as long as they have an emotion there, then it will get shared, and people, do you know what I mean? It will make or break a designer, not necessarily commercially, but in terms of notoriety, yes. So he's an interesting one.
To conclude, I always like a bit of a quick fire. Could each of you give up to 3 words that summarise his latest collection for you? Starting with you, Joshua.
Oh, God. Molly Goddard on acid.
4 words, but that's okay.
That is like 4, but...
Molly Goddard, we can say it's a brand, so that's
On
3
acid,
words.
yeah.
Molly Goddard on acid. Maria?
Emotionally divine.
Future fun frolicking?
Excellent alliteration. And you, Sinead?
Just large and colourful.
Perfect 3 words, large and colourful. Well, thank you all so much for joining me and giving up your Saturday morning. It certainly started the weekend colourfully and joyfully for me. So thank you all very much. And then I just wanted to say thank you all for watching, and I hope that it's had the same joyful, emotional effect on you as it has on all of our panellists. For more extensive Fashion Week coverage, be sure to visit showstudio.com. And if you're watching via Show Studio's YouTube, be sure to like, comment and subscribe below, and we will see you next time. There are many more shows coming up over Fashion Month. Thank you very much.